Hello, I'm Jan Dutton, the CEO of Prescient Weather, and we are the creators of Crop Profit. Today, we're going to take a look at USDA planting progress data and an interesting analysis that we've come up with over the past couple of weeks. Here in mid to late May, we're at the time of the year when the USDA starts to release corn, soybeans, and other crop progress data. We see this year that the corn crop started to be planted in early to mid-April, and we've already reached about 35% emerged in terms of the U.S. corn crop. One of the things that we've done then is if you take a look at the percent planted graphic, we see that there's a range of days through April and May when, over the prior years, when the corn crop has been planted. So we did an analysis in which we look at the number of days from March 1st each year for the corn and soybean crop relative to when the first non-zero planting progress date for the US was released by the USDA. And we see in terms of both soybeans and corn a clear downward trend, meaning the corn and soybean crop is on average being planted earlier and earlier each year. And the incredible number then is for soybeans. Soybeans is now planted almost 20 days earlier each year than it was in the early 1980s. So the question then is, does today's crop progress report, graphed in comparison to earlier years, really make sense when there's a substantial trend in crops being planted earlier in the year? So we decided to correct for that trend. And so, for example, on the left-hand side, we see the data presented in its original data form. So far this year, it would suggest that the U.S. corn crop planting progress is relatively normal. If we correct for that trend, however, we see that it shifts a little bit to the right in the planting distribution, in the planting date distribution for greater than 50%. And so, in fact, the crop may be a little bit late relative to this earlier and earlier planting progress. At this stage, however, it's not late enough to have a yield implication for the 2026 yield year. Where this trend is more significant is in soybeans. And so, again, on the left-hand side, we see soybean planted progress relative to all prior years as earlier than it's ever been. This information has been in the news with news outlets, agriculture news outlets speculating what the implication is for the soybean crop. If we do a trend corrected version, though, we see that in fact the soybean crop is actually quite normal relative to a trend corrected crop progress. And so instead of it being, quite earlier, the trend is such that if we correct for it, it's really been a normal year relative to prior years for the crop progress. Now we can do this same trend correction for the subsequent crop progress events, or rather the subsequent crop progress reports that come out for the rest of the year. The takeaway is because the crop is planted earlier and earlier each year, we might want to consider correcting the crop progress reports for this trend to allow for an oranges to oranges comparison of this year's crop progress information relative to prior years. Thank you very much. Please check us out at www.cropprofit.com and request a trial of Crop Profit to improve your grain trading performance. Thanks.